we are going to watch a CNN panel right now about student debt cancellation, in which frames are being thrown out by everybody on the panel. So much of cable TV and broadcast television is just because everything is done in 1 minute, 90-second, 2-minute sound bites. The frames are really important because you can only communicate so much in a certain amount of time. So I want to dig into what frames people are using to talk about student debt on CNN, and what is being elevated through that kind of talking and what's being ignored or neglected. So everybody ready?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
I have to ask, when you think about this, why are you already smirking? What's happening right now? Hold on, I didn't ask the question. Just tell me why you're smirking. Go ahead. What is your reaction?
Oh, to the student loan debacle?
Oh, is
the
it
disgrace?
is it a debacle?
that the president
There you go.
I mean, well, where do I start? It's inflationary, it's illegal, it's immoral, it's irrational, it's idiotic, it's inequitable, and those are just the things that start with the letter I. I mean, I could go on to other letters in the alphabet. I think that what he did today is a direct reaction to the fact that young Democrats, in all the polling we've seen, hate Joe Biden. They're done with Joe Biden, and he's sending them all a $10,000 check in an effort to buy their support. Even Nancy Pelosi, who I'm not often aligned with, as you know, stated on the record unequivocally that this is illegal. The President of the United States does not have the authority to do this. And the final question is, there is no world where you would consider this to be fair. What makes this debt more righteous than the small plumber who took out a loan to buy a new van, or the person who got a mortgage, or the person who got a loan to buy a car so they could drive themselves back and forth to work? Or what makes it fair to the person who paid off their debts, to the parent who just wrote the last check for their son or daughter to go to college? There's no world in which this isn't a cynical political ploy by an elderly president trying to buy the votes of the youngest people of his party.
All right. I don't want you to criticize what he's saying. I just want you to tell me what he's doing. What are the frames he's using to oppose student debt forgiveness?
He says the word illegal a lot. I feel like he's just trying to frame it as it's not allowed. That's it. End of story. Kind of like finality.
Yeah, there's like a core question of, quote, fairness.
Yeah, it's completely avoids any talk about what this can do for any real people or how it can benefit those voters, and it's just focusing on...
Wait. Osama, no criticizing.
Too advanced.
Is that criticizing?
No criticizing.
I thought that's what he's not. That's what he's not doing. And so
let's say what he is doing.
He's focusing on just dismissing it as illegal and dismissing it as a political ploy more than any kind of feasible policy solution to a problem he doesn't define.
It's illegal, it's unfair, and it's all about politics. It's all about Biden getting reelected. All right, the other thing I wanted to talk about in this is TV is also not just like what you say, but how you say it and how you deliver it. And I kind of wanted to talk about some of the other things happening here that are not just what he's saying, but how he's saying it.
Homeboy is popping off.
Yes, he is. He's angry.
He's feeling dramatic.
I feel like, yeah, he's just trying to ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, very much making this seem like one of the most absurd things that a president has ever done. It's just like, how could we ever do this? Like, this makes no sense.
Yeah, he's very emotive. He's very emotional.
He kind of belittles like the fact, like he just is belittling the fact that the conversation's happening, even with the tone.
Very dismissive.
The reason I brought this up is because a friend of the pod, Karl Rove, who is a Republican strategist, most famous for getting George W. Bush elected, he said this thing once where he was like, I can see who's winning. I can see who's winning a debate on TV by muting it. Because he's like, it doesn't really matter what someone says, it matters how they say it, which is totally, it's pretty unhinged, but so much of this kind of stuff is about not just what you say, but like the emotions you're carrying and the tone you're delivering, but which is usually set up for the person yelling.
Yeah, yeah,
But
interesting.
I was going to say, I also think that is extremely gendered and racial, and that like
Yes,
you mute it
yeah.
on this guy and you're like, that guy is winning an argument, and if you do that on a black woman or a black man, you're like, that person's crazy. They're fucking angry and they're
Yeah.
saying something probably socialist.
I'm like, I get like secondhand embarrassment watching this man speak, where I'm like, you sound so crazy, and just like, yeah, I don't know. And maybe that is just like being a woman, but I'm like, if I showed up to a room and spoke like that, people would it's just easy to like brush you off. But I'm not a white man with a Southern accent and a tie, so the world doesn't work like that for me.
I want to get into the response to this. So you've got the right-wing Republican person. That was his argument about why student loan forgiveness is unjust or stupid. And now here's the Democratic and center-left response.
You know, shocker that a Republican would be against something that a Democratic president is doing that is wildly popular at a time when Democrats are gaining momentum going into the midterm election, showing that it is yet another promise kept by this president. And by the way, it was a promise that he made to voters, to constituents, not just young people, but yes, young people during the campaign. He didn't just come up with this. And by the way, it's rich that Republicans are talking about fairness when they have passed billions and billions of dollars in corporate tax cuts, in corporate socialism, and now they're talking about fairness? Give me an effing break.
Again, no criticism, but what is this? What is the Democratic center-left response to Biden's student loan forgiveness plan? How is she framing it?
I feel like she's still responding to like the right-wing frame of whether or not it's fair, but she's like trying to justify its fairness.
I mean, she also kind of belittles him right back. Like it's a reactionary kind of response, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like she's just in the same frame as him. She's saying it's a lot of like, no, it is actually this. Like, no, it is actually politically good. This was a promise he made. This is not a new thing. No, it is actually good. And, you know, and then moving on to be like, Republicans did this thing. It's just refuting his negatives and then doing Republican negatives without saying any kind of the positives about the plan itself.
It's highly partisan. Like both of them are engaged in kind of, is this good for Biden? Is this bad for Biden? Is this a Republican thing? Is this a Democratic thing? Which we're going to talk about later, about how a lot of cable TV is set up about partisan conflict because you want people to fight on TV, so more people watch. Conflict gets views. To dig into your points there, between both of these people, where are people with student debt?
Nowhere.
Who do you think won between these two? Or convinced more people?
Probably the Republican.
The Republican. Yeah.
I also think the Republican won this little skirmish because his frame dominated the debate. Like she responded entirely to his frame. And, it's easier to set the frame when you go first, obviously, but I felt like she's totally debating the topic within his frame. And I think that is something that is really important to notice.
Okay, just to be like devil's advocate a little bit, I just feel like it's red flag number one when that man is so theatrical. Like he's a con man, you know? I'm like, you're selling me snake oil. If you're giving your little laundry list of I words, I'm immediately like, you have nothing of substance to say to me. Goodbye.
As the lay person, I think the Republican won.
Damn it, Sophie.
Sorry, Becca.
So we have 3 votes for the Republican winning, and Becca is sticking up for the Democrats. Appreciate it.
I want to
Becca.
believe that people are smarter than this man.
So we have a friendly moderator here who brings up another point.
Well, hold on.
It's a
Before we get
text.
there, no, excuse me. Before I get there, though, I want to put out this, and this will infuse the conversation because we're talking about equity and fairness. We know a part of the Biden administration has been about intergenerational wealth and fairness, particularly in communities of color. And I want to take a pause, and we mentioned the student debt plan, but I want to look at who it will actually impact. I mean, look at the screen there. Biden says it's going to help ease the pain in communities who are most hampered by debt, racial minorities, but The NAACP, maybe to a different point, says that it's not enough. And they say, quote, canceling just $10,000 of debt is like pouring a bucket of ice water on a forest fire. It hardly achieves anything, only making a mere dent in the problem. And we know the problem is vast. You got federal student loan debt now standing in the U.S. at around $1.6 trillion. There was a model from the Urban Institute that showed that 62% of the canceled student loan dollars would go to white borrowers versus the 25% that would go toward black borrowers, 8% for Hispanic borrowers. Now look a little closer, and it's black women, I'm pointing at myself, who hold the majority of student debt. Shouldn't come as a surprise. We see Americans, people of color, who must spend way more for a chance at the American dream. Brookings analysis showed that black college graduates owe $7,400 more just on average than their white peers. And take into account differences in interest accrual and graduate school borrowing, well, then you're talking about black graduates ending up holding nearly $53,000 in student loan debt after graduating. That's almost twice as much as their white counterparts. Now, I bring that up in the panel and have that moment because you're talking about fairness, right? And we know that at times we compartmentalize when equity ought to be doled out. But equality is not like pie, right? You don't get less because I get a piece.
Right.
So I just want quick responses to what the moderator is doing here.
I feel like she's reframing or attempting to reframe the conversation. Rooted back in like actual people and start to talk about how, you know, this is like a start to a solution and it's not even a full solution really.
Yeah, and just focusing on like who the plan helps the most / who it excludes.
She's injecting both like real borrowers into the thing and also like structural racism into the debate, into the frame around fairness, which was not brought up by the other two panelists. It's actually, this is very good moderation that you don't see that much on cable TV. And it's, to me, it's like a little embarrassing that she has to do this because the role of the pundit is to do what she's doing. And she's like, okay, let's like talk about real people.
She's like, say something real. Be fucking for real.
She's kind of just like, okay, let's talk about who this actually impacts and what that looks like, and maybe we can like have fair critiques about who's left behind and who's not, and like maybe that's where the debate should be, is talking about who we can help and to what extent, and not whether this is politically advantageous or disadvantageous to either party.
Also, to your point, Waleed, about her doing what the pundits should be doing, she like literally personalizes the issue where she's like, you know, I'm pointing at myself here, talking about black women holding the most debt. And yeah, just neither of the pundits have had anything to say about, I don't know, like the human experience.
So this is how the Republican responds to what the moderator is prompting.
How does that change? Does it change or influence you at all?
Oh, I think some of these things are extremely fair, and I think every time you peel a layer back, like you just did on the difference between white borrowers and African American borrowers, you see how little thought was put into this. But the part of Joe Biden's political base that he is most worried about are these young, white, privileged, liberal, gender studies majors who are so unhappy with him, none of them want to support this guy for president again. That's who he's writing a check to today. It is simply trying to buy off the people who he can't get today in the current polling and taking for granted everybody you just mentioned. And I can't believe that I'm the only person at this table who isn't more bothered by the fact that this is totally illegal. There is no authority for the president to do this at all. And Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democrat leader today, said, with the flick of a pen, Joe Biden has ... Why even have a Congress?
All right. How did our guy do? What do you think of his response?
It's always those damn gender studies majors, am I right?
To pay for Karen's daughter's degree in lesbian dance theory.
Well, what's like the political purpose? Why is he doing that? Like, tell me about his framing.
It's a good response from him to be like, yeah, look at who he's leaving behind. This is so poorly planned. This is so dumb. And also, we hate gay and trans people, right? Just FYI, as a reminder. And like, that's who we're helping here.
Whistle.
We're not helping black people. We're not helping poor black people. We're not helping poor white people. We're not helping anyone who's poor. We're just helping rich LGBTQ people, and that's the problem. They're taking all of our resources away when we should be having it. And the plumber who needs his loan forgiven is not going to get his loan forgiven.
Look at these Democrats being the party of the elite, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it's amazingly such a cynical response, because he's like, I agree that black borrowers are being left behind, and that's why we should cancel nobody's debt.
Right.
Like, that's the conclusion he has.
So true.
Because it's illegal. And he's like, that's why we can't cancel anyone's, because it's illegal.
It's, yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
see
the
you being
Supreme
left
Court,
behind,
so-
and I'm going to do nothing for you.
But the passion is like incredible. He's like, yes, it is unfair to people like you.
The passion really distracts from him being, he's like, yes, I see black borrowers being left behind. And that like really distracts from the point of what he's actually saying, which is what you just said, Waleed, where he's like, and again, this is illegal. And so we should cancel no one's debt.
I think Republicans are very good at hiding their true positions. Like, he is not
For sure.
saying, he's not exactly saying what he believes. He's just, it's really good messaging where it's like, it's like kind of whataboutism. So we're going to end the panel with her response to him, the Democratic response to him.
I am
Because
stunned.
for so long, Congress, Republicans specifically, has said no on any kind of policy that would give any kind of equity to the American people, especially those who need it the most. And I think it's insulting, Scott, that you say that this policy will not help Black students, will not help Latino students.
I didn't.
know
She
a
said it. I didn't say it. She laid it out.
I didn't say it. I read you the
You
fact.
just gave a very compelling report.
I read you the reports of what
you
happened.
said that this would only help white students that are studying gender studies, whatever that means. I don't know. It sounds insulting. Because
It is
people,
insulting. I'm
people
insulted.
people in my
My gender studies?
people in my community, people in Laura's community, people in many communities, including white people, will benefit from this. That's why it is equitable. Laura, is it the be-all and end-all? No, but it will be a step in the right direction. We need to reform the way that we send our students to school. When my parents brought us to this country, it was because we had this dream of being able to do anything you wanted if you studied hard, if you played by the rules. And my parents were able to send us to college because of the opportunities in this country. I want everyone to have that, and apparently Republicans don't.
All right, responses.
I mean, Scott really stays winning. Is that his name, Scott?
I forget. Yeah, Scott
It
Jennings.
felt right. I mean, she starts out her argument saying like, basically like Republicans have like forced our hand on this, and like Joe Biden can do this with, quote, the flick of a pen because Republicans have like said no to equity for so long. And I feel like that's just like, she's really stuck in his framing and like just defending why they're allowed to do this without really, I think she kind of gets closer when she's saying like people in many communities will benefit from this and everyone should have the opportunity to go to college, etc. when she's like talking about her personal experience. But she really starts out with being like just kind of defending why they're allowed to do this or why Joe Biden can do this.
I feel like she kind of made a well, I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think.
Say
if it
it.
was a mistake for her to do the like gender studies, whatever that means. Like, I was like, that's just an opening.
And then the
for
moderator,
this conversation. Yeah, they both did it where they were both like all of a sudden shifting again away from student debt and like
Scott's
people.
like, the more we talk about gender studies, the better.
Yeah.
The more I
Like,
win.
keep saying my
Exactly.
points for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought she did a good job closing when she kind of brought it more to values at the end, but like she spent you only get like 60 seconds to respond, and so I think to me she spent 30 seconds kind of repeating what he had already just said, which is
At
you don't
least,
need
yeah.
to do. Osama, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I fucking agree. I like for the first 15 seconds, I was like, what are you saying? Like, she's like, Republicans don't want to do anything about equity. They've never done it. I was like, this does not mean anything to anyone. Like, this man is talking about, yes, it's bad that black women are not getting their debt forgiven. And you're like, Republicans aren't doing equity. And it's like, get it together. And then she falls
What does
into
it
his trap,
mean?
talks about gender studies. And then she gets better. I agree. Once she like circles back to her own narrative, brings her story in, talks about her shit, and then expands it to be like, this is not good enough. Obviously, we need to do more. And she also just, I mean, there's just like very easy ways to refute some of his points, and it's so frustrating. Like, especially this illegal frame, which I know we're not supposed to, whatever, but like.
Yes. Okay, let's get into it. So now I'm like, Usama, Becca, Sophie, if you were on this panel, or if you were training a candidate or somebody to be on this panel, well, how would you go about this debate?
I mean, Scott is triggering. I'm not going to lie. You do want to be like, Scott, you're full of shit. Get out of here with your illegal bullshit. But I think because you are so limited on time, I would just say, like, ignore Scott. And yeah, just like lead with your own values.
Yeah, so if Scott starts with the frame of it's political, it's illegal, it's unfair, what would you train a Summer Lee to say?
I don't train a Summer Lee to say anything. Summer Lee says what she got to say.
What would you train an Usama to say?
We stand.
I mean, I don't want to fall into his frame. I think you can be like, this is bullshit. You know, like, this would help. You know, this is how many people have student debt in this country, and this is how many people would be served by this. 40% of the people who have student debt in this country are Black women, and, you know, a majority of people who have student debt in this country don't even get college degrees out of it, so they've gotten nothing from this debt. And to the only point that Scott has, which is it is illegal, it is not illegal. The HEROES Act of 2003 gives the president the ability to sign an executive order relieving debt in an emergency, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, like, at no point, like, I don't want to fall into his frame, but you can just say that and be like, yes, it is legal. Here's a bill that Congress passed, actually, that you were talking about, that gives the president the authority to do this, but let's still talk about the people that are actually going to be helped here, people like me, you know, which is what Summer Lee says, and brings her own story into this.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting to me about this whole discussion is that student debt cancellation, the origins of it, which we've talked a lot about on this pod, like really gets amplified by the Occupy Wall Street movement, and then becomes a big part of the Bernie campaign. Hillary ends up taking up some of it in 2016, but it's really a progressive cause and progressive demand that got that ascended to the mainstream Democratic Party establishment. And so now it's like progressives having to kind of advocate and defend what is now the mainstream Democratic Joe Biden moderate position. And it's clear to me that, like, the Democratic pundit on this panel is like, she's not really well versed in the cause because it's not like a mainstream Democratic cause. It's a progressive thing that became a mainstream Democratic cause after years of agitation and like movement building. And so I feel like that's also part of it. It's like you're kind of witnessing in real time the like awkward, like, I guess we got to figure out how to defend student loan cancellation
like,
now, and we don't really know how. Yeah, exactly. Well, so their job, a lot of the pundits, their job, if you're a Democratic pundit, is just to defend what the Democrats do. And so, and progressives, our job is to make the Democratic positions what they are. But I don't know. I feel like, Usama, you gave a very like rational, factual rebuttal, and I'm like, is there anything beyond the facts that you think is relevant to share?
I mean, I think there's like an element of like sharing what our values are as progressives, which is like everyone should like have the freedom to be able to like build the future that you want for yourself and for your family. For better or for worse, a college education is like essential for a lot of jobs. Higher education is also only really available to wealthy people unless you want to have crippling debt for the rest of your life. And so we should like break down a lot of those barriers and like create a path to prosperity for all people, regardless of what job you choose.
I think that's really smart. It reminds me of in 2016, I saw Bernie speak, and like the way that he talked about student debt forgiveness was like all about fairness, where he was like, young people in this country are told their entire lives that to like
Yeah.
succeed and move ahead that they need to go to college.
Why should it happen that millions of people who do the right thing, who go to college, get the best education that they can, why is it that they leave school $30,000, $50,000, $80,000 in debt? If you think about it for a moment, that's pretty crazy.
And then you're saddled with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, doing what everyone in your life has told you that you need to do. And what is fair about that? I don't know. That seemed like missing in this like discussion where I'm like, that's just such a that's such like a common sense thing that everybody feels, which is like, Becca, exactly what you're saying. Like, you are told that to be in the middle class, you need to go to college. And so why wouldn't we make that easier for people? Or why would we make that so hard for people? Thank you, Sophie, Usama, Becca, for participating in this media literacy training with me. You guys did an amazing job. We all learned about framing today.